Hi everyone, this is Tim Barron from Rocket Matter, and thank you so much for joining us today for the latest presentation in our Law Practice Management and Productivity webinar series. I am very excited today to have Carole Levitt and Mark Rosch, who will tell us all about using Google in your cloud-based law practice. I've known Carole and Mark for a few years now, and have been privileged to hear them present and be friends with them. They're wonderful folks, and they run Internet for Lawyers and have combined 30 years experience, Carole, in the legal field as a California attorney, as an Internet trainer, and as a law librarian, which is something very dear to my heart. And Mark and Carole have written a book, Google, Gmail, and Calendar in 1 hour for lawyers. And you know what? I'm going to stop there, and I'm going to let Carole and Mark tell you a little bit more about themselves, and then go ahead with the presentation. Thanks for joining us, guys. It's all yours.
Thank you, Tim. As Tim mentioned, Carole and I have been doing live continuing education seminars for a number of years. We originally met Tim through his participation and Rocket Matter's participation in the Association for Continuing Legal Education. For those of you keeping score, I'm the one on the left.
And I'm the one on the right.
Carole and I have written a number of books for the American Bar Association Law Practice Division, including Google, Gmail, and Calendar in 1 hour for lawyers. The idea behind the book is to help lawyers use the tools that are available in Google, Gmail, and Calendar more effectively in their practices. One of the great things about the tools that Google makes available is that everyone can access them, either free versions or what we're going to talk about today, primarily the paid version of Google Apps for Business, although all of the functionality that we're going to talk about today is available in the free version as well. And in addition to everyone having access to these tools, either for free or at a very low cost, they also integrate very tightly with cloud practice management packages like Rocket Matter and many others.
And don't forget, if you want to buy the book, we have a discount. And these slides will be online. You can use the discount code ROCKET, and you can see the address there. But I think these slides are going to be online, so you can get back to that later, and we'll put the slide on at the very end. So if you have any questions, as Tim mentioned, you're going to use the GoToMeeting or GoToWebinar chat box. And then for people who are watching this later on demand and you have questions, feel free to email us at info@netforlawyers.com. And even for those of you who are listening today live, if you have a question, in another day, feel free to email us here and ask the question. So as Mark mentioned, we're going to be talking about Google Apps for Business, and we're going to focus only on Gmail and Calendar. We're not going to talk about Drive and all the other tools that Google has. We use Google, Gmail, and Calendar. Currently, I'm using that to replace my Outlook, and I'm finding it to be really, really useful. There's a lot of advantages of using Google Cloud, Gmail, and Calendar. I find that it gives me a lot of flexibility. I can access my calendar and my Gmail from any device. They sync very easily. I can collaborate very easily using the calendar. Mark and I collaborate all the time on our calendars, and we'll talk about that a little later during the seminar, how you can share calendars. Google Apps for Business also can probably save you some money in IT costs. And many cities and corporations have switched to Google Apps besides individual lawyers and law firms.
Now, when we talk about Google Apps for Business, it is the paid version of the Google Apps, Gmail, Calendar, Google Docs that you may already be familiar with if you're not using a paid version. Google has a track record for using very sort of confusing names to identify their products. You can access similar products many different ways. Primarily, though, the difference between the Google Apps for Business and the Gmail or Google Apps account that you may already have is that Google Apps for Business Business is an enterprise level product. It costs $5 per month per user, and you can have unlimited users. Of course, you're going to pay $5 for each of them. But along with your $5 per user subscription, you get some additional guarantees from Google, including 99.9% uptime guarantee, so that the guarantee is you always have access to your tools, your emails, the documents and calendars that you store online. You get more storage for email and documents, as well as 24 hours a day, 7 day a week customer support via telephone, which is the reason that I made the switch originally to the paid version of Google Apps for our business, because we had run into an issue that we could not solve on our own with regards to access to our mail messages. Once we had a paid account, we can contact Google Tech Support to answer those questions, and they're really good about answering them. I had an issue just the other day, not related to service, but one of a particular product, the offline mail product that we'll talk about in just a bit, and I was on the phone, unfortunately, for an hour and a half with their technical support, but we got the problem solved. Additionally, Google Apps for Business has an add-on product called Google Vault, which is an additional $5 per user per month that would probably be of more interest to your clients than you, because it's an archiving and message and document and event retrieval system. So if you have clients who have record management requirements for the industries that they serve, if they have retention requirements or policies, the Vault helps manage those.
Well, I think it's also useful for investigations, things like that.
Yes, for e-discovery purposes, to turn over the messages in the accounts, to freeze them, to keep people from accessing or changing them. Vault is a product that's available for those requirements. One of the reasons that we like Google Apps, particularly Google Apps for Business, is that the information in the account is backed up in multiple locations on multiple computers. I don't know how often I've spoken to attorneys, and really just any business person or a computer user in general, who is not backing up their data on a regular basis. And Google Apps alleviates some of that problem, because part of the guarantee of Google Apps is that the data being backed up in multiple locations around the world is available for restoration if there is some failure in their system. And there has been a history where Google has had issues with data or email, and they have been able to back up the data in customers' accounts. Now, that's not to say that it's foolproof. Certainly there is a possibility that one might lose information stored in a Google account, and there are third-party options available to back up one's data. Backupify is one, but there are a number of others that allow you to back up and store your data locally, in addition to storing the data in the Google Cloud service. One of the other things to keep in mind is that Google's engineering staff is monitoring their system 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That includes the most up-to-date security patches, continually testing the servers and their hard drives to make sure that they're operating properly, and they're replaced on a regular schedule, so that they're replaced before they fail, rather than most people, certainly in an office situation, don't think about replacing hard drives until there's an issue. And then the data that's stored in the Google Cloud at their data centers physically, the data centers are protected by multiple layers of physical security, so that they're, on the perimeter there are fences, there are guards, there's key card entries, there's biometric entry access, so that only individuals, particularly engineers who have a necessity to access those machines, can actually access them. I've talked to some very senior level executives at Google who do not have access to the data storage facilities because they have no business purpose for being there. They don't have that access.
Well, a lot of people wonder if they own their information in Google Apps and Gmail and Calendar. And the Google Apps for Business Online Agreement, which you all should read, and I'll just quote paragraph 7.1, states that customer owns all intellectual property rights in customer data, and Google owns all intellectual property rights in the services. So the information is your information. It's not Google's. Confidentiality is a really big issue for lawyers in particular, and your information in Google Apps and Gmail and Calendar is considered confidential. The Google Apps for Business Online Agreement, which is different than the free Gmail agreement, states that each party will protect the other party's confidential information with the same standard of care it uses to protect its own confidential information. Each party may disclose other parties' confidential information when required by law, but only after if it's legally permissible, and if they use commercially reasonable efforts to notify the other party, and they give the other party a chance to challenge that disclosure.
As we were writing the Google Gmail and Calendar in 1 Hour book, I had interviewed a senior executive at Google who works in Google Apps, and he's a former attorney. He's an attorney working as a product manager on Google Apps. And one of the points that he made with regards to security in particular was that an important thing to remember is that Google, as a company, uses this system to store their intellectual property, their internal and external communications, and it's in their best interest to make the security and inaccessibility of the information, to keep it as confidential as possible. It's in their best interest to do that because they're storing their information on the very same system that they are leasing access to through Google Apps to customers like us and possibly you. So it's as hard and secure a system as they can make it because their information is stored there too. Here's an example of a blog post that an individual had posted indicating that he had been contacted by Google because they had received a subpoena for information from their account. Here the customer is saying that the communication that they received from Google said essentially to comply with the law, unless you provide us with a copy of a motion filed to quash the subpoena or formal objection filed in court via email, Google may provide responsive documents on this date. So for those court orders that Google is receiving, they're clearly reaching out to those customers and informing them and giving them the opportunity to respond and or to file motions to quash.
So they're not just turning over information,
Precisely.
Which is really great.
One of the questions that has gotten a lot of play in the technology media is, who has the most secure cloud productivity suite? Is it Google Apps? Is it Microsoft Office 365? Where's the sweet spot? Well, we do know that Google was the first of the cloud providers in this space to qualify for certification under the Federal Information Security Management Act. The FISMA provides a framework essentially for government information, rules and benchmarks that are required to protect government information, and different agencies have different benchmarks, but Google was the first to meet FISMA requirements. Office 365 does also meet FISMA requirements. So if the protections available are to the level of government agencies and the information that they need to protect, the security is thought to be there. I mean, when we look at who's using Google Apps, particularly government agencies. Here in New Mexico, what would be considered the largest law firm, the state's Attorney General's office, has moved all of their productivity functions to Google Apps, for example. They have done the background research, the due diligence, and in their looking at the security provided, they have found that it's adequate for their purposes, that the information is safe. So we show you how they and other attorneys are using it as well.
As far as the ABA and ethics goes, last year the ABA Commission on Ethics added a comment to Rule 1.6, and it was all about confidentiality. And they said, a lawyer shall make reasonable efforts to prevent the inadvertent or unauthorized disclosure of or unauthorized access to information relating to the representation of a client. Well, that's the rule that we've always had, but they added a comment, and basically they've put the onus on you, the attorneys, to make sure that if you're using things like cloud devices, that you need to do your due diligence and make sure that they are secure. So just going through this particular seminar, we hope we can assure you that Google is as secure as we think it can be, and you just have to make a reasonable effort to ensure that what you're using is secure.
Now, one of the things that we'll hear from attorneys, or questions that we'll have from attorneys, how can this be safer than me having a computer in my office with the information stored on it? And one of the things that you have to think about as a business owner, as a practicing lawyer, as someone who has a server serving or storing documents in your computer, any computer connected to the internet can be vulnerable. Are you making sure that the operating system on that computer is as up-to-date as possible? Are all the security patches installed? Do you have a hardware or software firewall to prevent intruders from accessing your network? If you have an IT consultant, somebody who comes in from the outside, have you done a background check on that individual? Have you done a full criminal background check, fingerprint, etc.? Because Google has done all of those things for the engineers who are accessing the machines that store the data in their cloud services.
At least 14 state bars have weighed in on the cloud ethics question, and most of them point to lawyers making a reasonable effort to ensure that their data is secure. In Iowa, you might want to look at their state bar ethics opinion, because they included a really nice checklist of due diligence questions that you should ask any cloud provider that you are intending to work with.
And since we have attendees from all over the country, if you make a note of this web address here on this slide, linkedin.in/ethicsofcloud, you'll find a listing of all of the available ethics opinions on this topic, and you can see if there is an opinion in your jurisdiction if you're not aware of one already. So I'll leave that there for just a second. So Tim and Carole both mentioned the slides will be available online later, so you can refer back to them and pick up any of these web addresses that you might not catch as we go along.
Absolutely. Mark, you had mentioned something about a backup. Was it Backupify? A few folks had a question about what that backup app was.
Backupify is a third-party product that integrates with Google Apps that allows you to have a local backup copy of the data that's stored in your Google Apps account. So if for whatever reason there was a massive failure on Google's end and the data was not available for them to restore, you would have a local backup. And having a product like Backupify is, and I mention it only because it's the one that I've sort of read the most about currently. I'm not using a backup product currently. It's a belt and suspenders kind of strategy. The most ardent data backup people, or I should say the people who practice data backup most ardently, will have a series of intermittent backups. When I used to work in a big office situation, we would back up our data every day, and we would have a tape backup system It shows you how long ago this was. We would back up to tape, and every other day we would use a different tape. So there would be a Monday and a Tuesday backup, and on Wednesday we would back up to the Monday tape. So we always had 2 backups in case one of them failed. Backupify and similar products essentially do the same thing. If for some reason Google Apps lost the data and it became unavailable and they were unable to restore it from, I believe they have at least 2 layers of backup at the data centers, you would have a local version that you would be able to restore as well.
So Mark, let's jump into Gmail.
And you know
did you have another question, Tim?
Yeah, so you know what, just before you jump into that, just one more, sort of a clarification. One of the things that, one of the concerns that kept popping up in the questions widget were security concerns and privacy concerns. And I'm glad I didn't interrupt you guys because you sort of answered it as you went along. But just to confirm, is there a difference between security and privacy policy between the paid and the free version of Google?
My understanding and recollection is that there is not a difference between the security and privacy policies of the paid and free versions. And the when I asked that question, actually I addressed that in the book because I asked that question of this SVP at Google who I had interviewed, and his response essentially was, we have nothing to gain as a company by offering less security or confidentiality to customers of a free service than we do of the paid service. Where the value is in the paid service is by adding more options like the uptime guarantee, the additional storage, the 24/7 phone support, rather than offering less security of the data for people who are not paying and more to people who are paying. He was very clear in his response that there was no difference. So as Carole said, why don't we jump in and start talking a little bit about Gmail in particular, looking at some of the features and functions and the ways that lawyers can use them in their practice. So here's the Google Gmail inbox. In the browser, this is how most people will interact with Google Gmail. One of the main differences of the Google Apps for Business accounts is that you can customize by adding your logo. So everyone in your office, when you're paying for the Google Apps for Business account, when they access their email via their browser, you can customize it in this way. Now, people who prefer using Outlook or some other email client can continue to do that. You don't have to use the browser as your interface for Gmail. But when we talk about Gmail, we generally talk about the functions that are available in the browser, because people who are using it in Outlook are probably already familiar with Outlook and have features and functions that they prefer, and they already know about those. So we're going to take a look at some of the features that are available when we're using it in the browser. Here you'll also notice that we have the email address displayed. Because we're using an Apps for Business account, it shows my business email address. One of the reasons that I like to use my netforlawyers.com email address, which is hosted and powered by Gmail, Google Apps for Business in my browser, is because I can use this search box up at the top of the interface to search through my messages very quickly. And because it's a Google-powered search, I can use many of the advanced search features that I'm familiar with from Google Web Search to locate information in my email.
So you can search with quotation marks if you want to search a phrase, for instance.
And we'll take a look at some of the other advanced search capabilities, I think, in a little bit. Here on the left-hand side, you'll see that there's a system of labels. Labels essentially very similar to folders in Outlook. They allow you to organize your messages, and you can do it any way that you'd like. You can organize by client name, by topic. You can also apply multiple labels to the same message. Unlike older versions of Outlook, where you could only apply one, or you could only put a message in one folder, Outlook has finally come around and you could put a message in multiple folders. Here we can add multiple labels to a particular message. So if we have a label for a client, then we have individual labels for each of their matters, we can use those and apply any that apply to a particular message. Here in the center, we see information about the sender, as well as the subject line, and then sort of a partial view of the message. And then we also see the time on which a message was received, or if it wasn't today, we would see the date that it was received. About 2 months ago, Google introduced a new inbox look for Gmail. It automatically sorts the incoming messages. It's sort of an automated filtering system that creates these set topical tabs. So there's the primary inbox, which is what they think are the important messages from real people. And then there are the social messages, those coming from Google+, and then they try and filter out the promotional offers, which is kind of useful, but I don't particularly care for it. I prefer to set up my own filtering and labels. Most of the people that I've spoken to who use Gmail regularly don't particularly care for it. So we're going to focus primarily on the rest of the inbox and how we can access and manage information there.
Well, here's the conversation view, and I think this is the default. And I was pretty opposed to using Gmail for a long time because I didn't like the conversation view. But then, of course, I learned that you can turn the conversation view off. So now I am a convert to Gmail. Just you can notice that there's a bunch of messages, or 7 messages at the very top between Mark and me. So they're grouped together in one conversation. The latest message in that conversation was January 5th, but other messages could have date back earlier, and I wouldn't know it until I opened up this whole conversation. I personally like to see all of my messages in chronological order, reverse chronological order. Notice too there's a little paper clip, so if any of these messages had an attachment, I would know that in advance. Now, if you look at the next display, this is the conversation view when it's off. Everything's in chronological order. This is what I like. So how do you get there? How do you turn the conversation view on and off? Well, all you have to do is you go to that little gear icon that is not labeled at all. And that's really the magic button into all the different settings. And then when you click on the gear icon, you'll get a drop-down menu, and you would then click on Settings. And then when you go to Settings, you have a series of tabs at the top, and there's various settings. There's general settings, there's lab settings, there's chat settings. And so you would choose the general tab, and that's the default one, and then you can turn off the conversation view. And one thing I really like about doing this is I can actually turn the conversation view on and off. I could do it all day long if I want. So there are actually times when I do want to see my Gmail messages in a conversation view, and I just turn it back on, and then I can turn it back off, in a few minutes. So I think that's a really handy device.
So I mentioned the search capabilities of Gmail in the browser, using that search box up at the top of the inbox. Just a plain search box, sort of like Google's web search. You type your terms in, etc., and return results. But there are advanced search capabilities, and Google has done a great job of hiding them. Google is famous for creating really useful features, functions, tools, products, and then not telling anybody that they're available, or where to find them, or really how to use them.
And Mark, it's not even until you click on the unlabeled down arrow that little black box pops up and says Show Search Options. So you would have no idea that there are other search options there.
And they're really powerful because not only do they search through the messages, but they also search full text through attachments, Word files, PowerPoint presentations, Excel spreadsheets, PDFs that are full text searchable, are all searchable through this search box. You can also search through chat transcripts if you've opted to save them. We'll talk about chat a little bit later. But when I click on that down arrow, I get this drop down with numerous advanced search capabilities. So now I can search for messages from a particular person. This is a search that I think Carole did through her inbox. She was looking for messages from me that have the words rocket matter, and notice they're in quotation marks, so we're searching for the exact phrase. And we can exclude words like academy or page. We can also click the box for only messages that have attachments. If you remember that the message that you're looking for had an attachment, you can click that and limit your results just to those types of messages. So we can do a very sophisticated, targeted search through all of the messages that are stored in the inbox. And I tend to leave all of my messages stored in the inbox. I don't delete a lot of messages because I've got a ton of storage space. I'm using less than a quarter of my email storage space after about 6 years, and that includes messages and attachments. And I can full text search them very easily using the search box. I can target the messages that I think are in there and bring them up fairly quickly.
And also you can focus on a specific date or a range of dates if you kind of know when the email was sent or received. Now, here's another thing that you can do. Let's see. Is it my turn, Mark? Where am I?
Yes, it is.
Okay, I got lost for a second there. You can add these gadgets to your Gmail inbox. And there's a calendar gadget and there's a docs gadget. Now, when you do this, the great thing is as you're looking at your inbox, you also can take a quick look at your calendar. You don't have to switch to the calendar. And you can also look at the docs that you've recently opened. Now, if you don't see the gadget displayed, if you look at the bottom left-hand column, there's these little ellipses. And when you click on those, then the gadgets will pop up. Now, I noticed that I think, is this the one where the docs one has disappeared, right, Mark? Didn't I tell you that recently?
Yeah, one of the great things about Google is that when they introduce these new products, often they'll introduce them in a section they call labs, and like it sounds, they're experiments that are developed either by Google engineers in their spare time or third-party developers, and Google makes them available for use, with the caveat that they might not always work and that they could disappear at any time. And this is one that's disappeared, at least for now. The Google Docs gadget is not currently available, but I've read in some of the support forums that there's some third-party developers who are working on bringing it back. So we leave it here because it's pretty useful, because it gives you access to those documents right from the inbox without having to open up a new tab and search for them, etc.
And then if you wanted to add the calendar gadget to your Gmail inbox, once again, you go to that magic gear that's not labeled. You click on that. You click on Settings, and then you choose Labs. And Labs is the next slide. So we choose Labs, and then we enable the Google Calendar gadget. Now remember to click Save. And that's going to be all the way down at the bottom. For almost everything we're doing when we're in these settings areas, we usually have to remember to scroll down and click Save.
One of my favorite tools available in Gmail, and this is available just in the web interface, is the ability to unsend a message. Everybody I've ever talked to has had the experience of sending a message and then wishing instantly that they hadn't sent it. Gmail, with the addition of this experiment, the undo send experiment, gives us the ability to pull that message back. And unlike some email systems where it just sends a message saying, Mark Rosch would like to recall this message, Gmail actually doesn't send the message. And we do that by accessing the settings once again. We go back to Google Labs as we saw in the previous slide. And on the Labs tab, we scroll down to the Undo Send lab, and we enable Undo Send, scroll down and click Save. And now that gives us the ability to set a delay for our messages. So once we've done that in Labs, we go back to Settings and we go to the General Settings tab, and then we scroll down, and it's added a new line for Undo Send. We click into the box. After we select the General tab, we click the box to enable Undo Send, and then we select a time frame from 5 to 30 seconds, during which Google essentially hasn't really sent our message. It just holds on to it. So after I click send, my message sits in an outbox for 30 seconds, because that's what I've selected. And then I get the option to undo that sending. If I click undo, the message opens back up in my browser. I can edit it. I can send it to somebody else. I can delete it like it never, ever happened.
Mark, this is, I think, the only time where you have to do a two-step process to do something in Gmail. So people really need to remember that. They have to go to labs, and they have to go to general. Don't you think it's the only two-step process?
There are one or two others.
Oh, okay.
But this is it is important to remember that just enabling the lab doesn't do everything. There is this second step. So once you do, if you find that it might be useful, make sure to go to the settings in Gmail, to the General tab, to set your time frame. Now, I use this a lot because I very often will have a look back after I've clicked send and re-proofread an email, make sure that it says what I want it to say. Occasionally, and when I say occasionally, I mean once a year, for whatever reason, I will click undo send, and I will get a message telling me that the message is not available because it had been sent immediately. Don't know why it happens, but there is some failure in the undo send. So while it is an amazing tool and one that I do use fairly regularly, there is a possibility that it might fail you, as any technology tool might.
Well, and it's a lab. It's experimental, so I guess that's their out.
I guess so, but like I said, it is the rare exception when that's happened.
Another thing that we like at Google is the canned responses. If you get the same question over and over again, maybe from a potential client, you might want to create some canned responses, and then instead of looking for an old message, copying your answer, pasting it into a new message, this is a much easier way to just insert that message into a new email. You can obviously tailor it a little bit more if you want and address it to the person you're talking to, but we use this quite a bit, the canned responses. And it's sort of a multiple-step process to set them up. Once they're set up, it's really easy. And in our Google Gmail and Calendar book, we give you the step-by-step process on how to set up canned responses.
But in responding, we can open up a new email or click reply, click the canned response link, and then it'll show us all of the responses that we've set up previously, and then we select any of them from the list, and it inserts all of the text from that canned response into the message, and we can send it right off. There are many third-party programs, developers who have created products and tools to help extend the features of Google Gmail. I'm sort of an inveterate night owl. I will often work late into the evening, and I'll respond to client emails or send questions to clients, except I don't really want them to know that I'm working late at night. Many years ago, I got into an email conversation with a client at 2 o'clock in the morning, and it's the last thing that I want to do. So now, there's a product called Boomerang at Gmail Boomerang or at linkon.in/Gmail Boomerang that allows us to schedule emails for later delivery. It's available as an extension for Chrome, Firefox, and the Safari web browsers. And once you download it and install it, it adds a send later button to your message composition window. So now I can type a message, click the send later button, and I'm going to get a series of options to deliver my message at a later time. I can pick a relative time in 1 hour, in 2 hours, in 2 days, tomorrow morning, or I can set a specific day and time to send that message. Boomerang is available for free for 10 messages per month. If you want to send more messages, for Google Apps for Business users, it's $14.99 per user per month to send unlimited scheduled messages. And if you send a lot or you like to schedule when your emails are sent, it's a fairly useful tool. Now, one of the other things that we can do in Boomerang is that once we schedule a message to be sent, we still have complete control over it. There is an outbox that stores all the messages scheduled to be sent. And as long as they're in that outbox, I can access the message, I can click it, I can open it, I can reschedule it, I can edit the message, I can delete it entirely, or I can schedule it to go right now. If I've changed my mind and decided I need to send the message now, I can do that from Boomerang.
Hey guys, I'm going to pop in. This is Tim. I'm going to pop in with a couple of questions. But before we do that, we still have some material to cover, everyone that's on this call. And if we can't get to a question or to questions, we'll try to get them at the end of the presentation if you're willing to stay for a minute or two afterwards. And if we can't get to them there, I'll forward them to Carole and Mike. And a few of you had questions about the book title. We will be putting up that information at the end again. But remember, I think it's Google Calendar and Gmail in 1 hour for lawyers. It's available on the ABA website. And just all of you on this call get a 20% discount by using the code, I think it's Rocket. Am I right, Carole and Mike?
That is correct. And the discount is available at our website. The ABA will probably charge you the cover price.
I see. Okay.
But the web address that's on the last slide, and we'll put that up at the end, you will be able to get a 20% discount if you were interested in the book.
Terrific. So before we continue, just a quick word from our sponsors, who just happen to be Rocket Matter. And we're really happy with this program because Rocket Matter integrates, of course, with Google Calendar and Google products. And coming next month, we are going to be integrating with Google Drive. So it's something that's been asked for, and we're very excited about being able to offer it very soon. And for those of you who know us from our educational materials, whether webinars, ebooks, or our blog at legalproductivity.com, as you know, we make the super fast cloud-based legal billing and practice management software. We integrate, in addition to Google, with Dropbox, Evernote, Chrometa, and a bunch of other apps. Now, if you want if you'd like to see the slides for this show, later this afternoon, check out legalproductivity.com, and we'll put up a blog post there with a link, with a summary of this and a link to the slides. And let's see if we can field at least one question before moving on, and the rest we'll keep for later on. Let's see. This one's from Beverly. We discourage using the inbox as a filing cabinet for client communication, and encourage lawyers to save web-based emails to the client's electronic folder. Any tips on how to do this easily? Now, I think that might need a follow-up question about
that would really require a little bit of research on my part, and it really also depends on what system you're using to manage those client files. Whether it's just a file on a hard drive with documents stored in it, and then a folder with all of the emails. Certainly, you could print the emails to PDF and add them to that folder. But if you're using a client or case management system, the process is going to be different for each one. If that questioner wanted to send me an email at info@netforlawyers, I might be able to answer it in more detail, and would be happy to try to.
Excellent. So you know what? Mark and Carole, at the end of this, I'll forward you the list of questions, and folks who are on this call, we'll get to all of your questions at some point. But we still have a lot to cover, so I'm going to turn it back over to Mike and Carole to wrap up. Okay?
Sure. Well, the other thing we want to mention is another little extension that we like, and it's Rapportive, and it shows detailed information about people who have sent you a message, and it actually is based on their publicly available information from their social networking sites. So for Rapportive, when Mark receives an email from me, on the right-hand side, there's all this information about me, so it helps you remember who the person is if you get an email from someone you're not familiar with, you don't remember meeting them. Now, if Mark replied to me, I would have no idea that he was seeing all this information about me. It doesn't show back up on the reply email.
One of the other complaints that I've heard from people not wanting to use the web interface or not to use Gmail in general is that if I'm offline, I don't have access to my messages like I would in Outlook. If I'm on a plane, I can open up my Outlook and I can respond to messages and then send them the next time I connect to the internet. Well, Google gives us the ability to store messages locally with the offline mail plugin to the Chrome web browser. If I go to the Chrome web store and install it in my browser, when I open up a new tab, I have this blue offline Google Mail icon available. Now, this is another one of those two-step processes where once it's installed, you have to authorize offline mail to be stored. But once you do, the messages are stored locally. You can choose a time frame to store and sync messages, a week, 2 weeks, or up to a month worth of emails. And now, if I'm offline, if I'm on a plane, I open up a Chrome window, a browser window in Google Chrome, I get this blue icon, I can click on it, and it will open up, and I will have access to those messages that I've stored locally. I can respond to any of them, and next time I'm connected to the internet, they will be sent.
And of course, in our book, we have a pretty lengthy chapter on how to do the offline. It's a little involved, wouldn't you say, Mark?
A bit.
Well, adding events to my calendar is from a specific Gmail is one of my favorite things to do. Oftentimes I'll get an email, maybe it's from Southwest Airlines about my upcoming trip, and I want to put it into my calendar. And I didn't think I could do it when I first started using Gmail, but actually you can, but you have to know to click on the More button. And Gmail and Google, even the Google search, they always have a More button, and there's always more cool stuff on the More button. So when I click the More button, I get a drop-down menu, and then it says Create Event. And when I click on that, it's going to immediately put that email right into my calendar, if you look at the next slide. Now, it's going to put it on today's date, so you have to remember to change the date. So the first thing you're going to see is it places the email subject line right into the event subject line. And then, as I mentioned, it places today's date into the date field, so I always have to change that. I'm usually changing it to whatever date I want. And then the third thing is I can set the time and the time zone. Mark and I travel to do seminars all over the country, so I'm always making sure that I'm putting the right time zone in. And then the fourth thing is that I can move an event, I can repeat an event and move it to other calendars. I can have it in multiple calendars. And then I can place the content, or it actually automatically places the content of the email into the description part of my calendar. And I'm going to show you some more details about this when Mark and I switch over to the discussion about Gmail Calendar. But this is just a great little feature that I use all the time. Now, Gmail also has contacts and tasks. And to find that, you have to click on the red arrow next to the word Mail. You get a drop down and you click on either the contacts or the tasks, whichever one you want to do. So if you look at the next slide, this shows you how you can set up your tasks. You add a date, you can describe the task. It's easy to delete a task by clicking on the garbage can, and the plus sign will let you add a new task. Now we also can go to the contacts, and we do it the same way. We click on the arrow by the mail, and you can add a new contact. You can create groups. You can even import contacts, which I've done from my Outlook. When you create a new contact, you can notice at the very bottom there's this add. Well, when you create a new contact, it automatically adds it. Don't click the add. If you click the add, it's going to bring up a new contact page and let you add a different contact. So there's really no way to save. It just automatically saves. The add button is a little bit misleading here. And you can put in any information you want about a person. their name, email address, work phone, and you can also add a note about the person, and you can add multiple phone numbers, you can add nicknames, just a variety of ways to really increase the information in your contact list. Now, the next thing I want to show you is the chat icon. The chat icon, you would just kind of hover over that icon, and then the next thing you do is you'll see a drop-down list of people who you've put there, and if you hover over their name, you can access 3 different ways to chat with that person. So I'm hovering over Mark's name, and I can either do a video call with him, I can do an old-fashioned text chatting on the computer, or I can email him, and I also can contact him by phone through the computer. So we're actually speaking through our computer speakers, which is kind of cool. And then the next thing you'll see is Hangout. Now, Hangout used to let you do a video conference on the fly with 10 people. They've just increased it to 15 people recently. So I really like using the Hangout.
So when we click from that view that we looked at earlier, when we hover over a contact's name and we click on the video chat, we're creating a Hangout just one-on-one with that contact whose name we've clicked on. Because we can have up to 15 people, we can add their names into the Add More People box. We can add their email address. We can add them by name if they're in our contacts, or we can have a Hangout with a complete circle of people who we've already added on Google+, which is a whole other conversation. We can also add people by telephone number. So if we click the Add Telephone, we enter someone's telephone number, it calls that individual and they can participate in this conference by telephone. So some people might be online with their cameras and some just by voice. Now this is what the Hangout will look like. The primary window in the center is usually one of the, not you, it's one of the other people on the conference. And if there are multiple people, it's the person who is speaking at that moment. In addition to being able to view people via camera, we can also share our screen, similar to what we're doing here in GoToMeeting. And if we click on the View More Apps link at the bottom, we also have the ability to share documents that are stored in our Google Drive. Now, if I click Screen Share, Google gives me this window that shows me all of the open windows on my computer. And I can click on any one of them. I'll select the PowerPoint presentation that I have open. And when I do that, now instead of seeing my camera, people will see the PowerPoint screen that I'm sharing. Everyone can see what I'm doing on my screen. If I'm pointing to individual slides or making changes, they can see it. We can talk through the content of the presentation, but only I have the ability to make changes. Everybody will see those changes when I make them, but only I can make them. If I want to give everybody the ability to edit a document, I need to store it in Google Drive. And I need to give them editing capability before we start our Hangout. Otherwise, it gets kind of dicey. But if I select that Share from Google Drive option, it opens up a window that shows me all of the documents in my Google Drive. I highlight the document that I want to share, I click the Select button, and now in the main window, it's going to show the document that I've just shared. And because I've shared this document on Google Drive in advance with Carole, we both have access to the document. We can both click into this document in the window, and we can both make edits to the document in real time. Similarly, if we had a Hangout with up to 15 people, it might get a little difficult, but we could share that document with everybody, and they could all make changes, and everybody would see them almost in real time.
Well, here's another cool tool that I think a lot of people don't know about, and it's called Call Phone. This actually lets you use your laptop and your speakers to call someone on their landline or their mobile phone. This is really useful if your cell phone battery is dead, but your laptop is not dead. Of course, you have to have an internet connection. So when you click on that little phone receiver, then you get a pop-up with a key. You can key in people's phone numbers. It's a pop-up. Calling in the US and Canada is actually free, which I think is great. If you want to call other countries, the rates will vary, and they'll let you know what they are, but they're as low as 2 cents per minute. So this is the one instance where an advanced Google service doesn't require the other person to also be using Google. You're actually just calling them on their phone. Now, to actually enable this, you've got to go back to your settings, and you would choose the chat tab from the setting, and you would enable text, voice, and video chat and call phone. You can also enable saving transcripts of your text chats here on this particular page.
We're going to leave Gmail for just a second and wrap up talking a little bit about Google Calendar. Just like Gmail, Google Calendar gives you the ability to customize your calendar with your logo. And one of the great flexible things about Google Calendar is that you can create multiple calendars. Your different calendars can have different privacy settings. So you can have private calendars, you can have calendars that you share just with other attorneys in your office who are working on a particular matter. You can also have a calendar for a client that you share not only with the attorneys working on the matter, but also with the client, so they can see upcoming deadlines on their case, etc. You can look at the calendar in different ways. This is the agenda view of the calendar, and if I want to add an event to my calendar, I just click the Create Event button. When I do that, I get this screen where I can add all of the pertinent information about my event. I can fill in information about the event here, including a description and the time, etc. I add my description here. I can also add attachments, so if there are documents that I want people to have in advance of an event, I can attach them using this link. I can also set up a series of reminders, either to send me an email or a pop-up on my computer to remind me of this meeting, either 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 1 day, 2 days, a week, whatever, in advance. And then I can add people to the event. I can invite them by email. Once I do that, they will get an invitation via email with information about the event. And then I can decide who has the ability to modify this event, whether the guests can whether they can invite other people, whether they can see the guest list, or I can uncheck all those boxes, and folks wouldn't have the ability to do any of that. One of the other things that I find useful about Google Calendar is the ability to sync calendars among people within the office. Now here, I'm trying to set a meeting, but I don't know when Carole is available. By clicking the Find a Time tab, I can see the calendars of the people who I'm trying to invite, as long as they've shared their calendar with me. I can see where the free blocks are, and so here I can see that between 3 and 4, Carole has a block, and between 12 and 1, she has a block. So I can schedule the meeting there, and we would both be available.
You can also easily sync your mail and your contacts and your calendar with any of your devices, a Mac, a PC, even a BlackBerry if they're still around. The syncing happens automatically, but if you have any problems at all, you would go to this page and they'll give you information on how to do your syncing. So Mark, do you think we're about ready to wrap up?
We just have, I think, one more thing.
Okay. So the other thing we like a lot about the Gmail calendar, just like the Gmail messages, you can search, and you can do an advanced search through your entire calendar. So you can type in words that you're looking for that you know are somewhere in the calendar, and you can, even I can fill in where it's happening. I'm looking for the words Montana and the word cyber sleuth. I know it's going to be at the Red Lion, and you can also add in words or exclude words. So I don't want the Montana Bar. I'm looking for the Montana State Government event that I've put on my calendar. So it's really easy to do a very sophisticated search through your calendar.
So hopefully we've given you sort of an overview, some ways that that lawyers are using Google Apps in their practices, some ways that you might find it useful if you're already using Google Apps. And one of the great things is that because all of these features and functions are available in the free Gmail product, you can have a look at them, try them out in your personal accounts, and see if it's something that you think would be useful to you in your practice before spending the money on the Google Apps for Business account. Even though it's not a lot of money, it's only $5 a month per user, or $50 per user per year if you pay in advance. It's still nice to be able to have a look at them for free for an extended period. Google does also offer a 30-day free trial of the Google Apps for Business account, but I can never seem to get all my questions in the first 30 days. So having access to all of these in the free products is really useful as well. So I want to thank you all for coming, and I will turn the program back over to Tim now.
Hey, Carole and Mark, thank you so much for that very, very informative webinar. And we are recording this, and just to reiterate, we're going to put a little bit of post-production work on this over the next week, and it will be available on our Rocket Academy page. And the Rocket, if you go to legalproductivity.com, there'll be a tab up there that says Rocket Academy. We have over 20 videos on there, and we'll be adding this video to it. And again, later on today, we'll have a blog post up there with a link to the slideshow. You know, we're already about 5 minutes over, but we still have over 100 folks on this call. So Mark and Carole, would you mind if we just pitched you maybe a question or two?
Go right ahead.
No, go right ahead.
Fantastic. Okay, so this is a follow-up from that question that I was asking from Beverly. Printing to PDF is the only way I know to save messages from Gmail to a local client folder. Do you have a better idea? One of the biggest disadvantages of Gmail is that it gives you very few format choices for saving emails locally. Any thoughts on that?
Well, that is definitely a limitation. I mean, because you can, in addition to printing the messages as PDFs, you can export Gmail messages, but there aren't very many file formats available. You can export them as text. You can export them as HTML and store them locally. But other than those options, I don't know of many others.
Okay, so we have. I'm just going to offer 2 quick questions, and any of the others, we'll try to get those to you, the answers to you offline. Now, folks had quite a few of our listeners had questions about if some of the functionality that you talked about for Google Mail and Google Calendar were also available on Android devices, on the apps on Android.
Well, on Android devices, I will admit to not being an Android expert. I mainly, when I'm using a tablet, will use an iPad. But my recollection is that if you are accessing your Google Apps account via the browser on your Android app rather than the Gmail app on the device, you will have access to many of these same features. You might have to shift to using the classic or desktop view. I know that in iOS, when I open a Chrome browser and I'm looking at Google, if I scroll down to the bottom, I have the option of using the tablet version or switching to the desktop or classic version, I think they call it. When I switch to the classic version, I usually get the desktop or laptop version of the web pages that I'm accessing, and I believe, and I haven't done it in quite a while, but I do believe that you get access to most of the features that we were just looking at when you're using that view of the browser. So those of you who are using Androids, particularly the person who asked that question, have a look. Try accessing your account via the browser on the Android device, and send me an email. Let me know how it works.
And if you have, before offering the last question, if you have any questions, and we always appreciate your feedback, shoot me an email, tim@rocketmatter.com. tim@rocketmatter.com. That's tim@rocketmatter.com. Let me know what you thought of the webinar. If you have any ideas for future topics, let me know. And if you have any questions that you'd like answered, let me know. So this final question is for Mark. Mark, how long have you had your beard? I'm not kidding. That was typed into the questions widget.
I'm guessing that I'm hoping at least this is someone who I know who asked that question. The answer is that I have had this beard for 32 years.
Except once half of it was shaved off in a college prank.
Yeah. So after that, it was all shaved off.
I hope.
So I have a feeling that the person who asked that question may be one of the people who shaved off half of that beard.
That's
practices in Charleston, South Carolina.
That's quite possible. That's quite. But listen, guys, thank you so much for this great presentation, and to all of the folks who are on this call, thank you so much for attending. We'll see you next time. Goodbye.